The Economic Recovery Commission recognizes the importance of entrepreneurship and small business development in Newfoundland and Labrador, and is a proud sponsor of this series. To request your copy of the New Opportunities for Growth report, which profiles 11 new growth sectors, please call 738-0199.
Welcome to the Women's Enterprise Bureau Presents. My name is Nancy Creighton. For the next 13 weeks, we're going to be exploring business, the pros and the cons, the ups and the downs, the opportunities, the trends, and how to get started. Many interesting guests will be bringing us their stories of how they got started and what they're doing now. Some of the information that we're going to be covering includes women in business, the trends and the opportunities, is business ownership for you, idea generation, and information on various sectors as tourism and inventing products, finding the dollars, and much, much more. Our program today focuses on winning women in business. The trends are clear. Women are starting businesses at 3 times the rate of their male counterparts. We know that 23% of businesses are owned by women, but 60% of new businesses are being started by women. Women are very important to our economy. We also know that the survival rate of women-owned businesses is 47% versus the 25% survival rate of their male counterparts. Today we're joined by 2 winning business women, Teresa Ralph and Janet Kelly. This wonderful program to launch our series on winning women in business exhibits Janet Kelly, who is owner of Auntie Cray's Gourmet Food Shop, and more recently Auntie Cray's Bakery and Coffee Roastery in St. Philip's. She won the 1992 award from the P.J. Gardner Institute for Entrepreneur of the Year, the P.J. Gardner Institute for Small Business Studies at Memorial University. Teresa Ralph joins us. She's co-owner with her husband Gerald of Heritage Woodworks Limited with their manufacturing plant in Eastport and their retail operation here in St. John's. She won the finalist award for Woman Entrepreneur of the Year. Welcome, Janet and Teresa.
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're here. Maybe we can start by asking you, Janet, how did you ever get started in business?
I started in business in 1977, but prior to that I'd spent about 4 years working in my husband's business, running his pub, Bridget's, there on Cookstown Road in St. John's. But it was not mine, it was somebody else's, so I had the craving to do something for myself that was not somebody else's idea. And the idea came to do Auntie Cray's, and it's all history from there.
Very good. But what about business attracted you? You had that experience with your husband's business.
I found by being in his business, and that was my first experience in a business. He had had it for 10 or 12 years prior to that, and I had not been involved except on the sidelines at home, doing a little bookkeeping and that sort of thing. But actually working in the business gave me a taste for it, and I found that I was enjoying it and that I was good at it. And so voila, a new opportunity to do something.
And why Auntie Cray's? Why did you?
Why that particular business?
Mm-hmm.
I was taking a holiday and I was driving through the south shore of Nova Scotia, and I stopped for a sandwich in a place that was called the Greek Gourmet. It was a little specialty food shop, and there was a young couple there who had were running the business, and they'd been running it for about a year. And they had their small child there with them. It was very cozy, comfortable. And I looked around and saw the array of products they were selling, and it was a small town of about 6,000 people. And I thought, St. John's doesn't have this, and it would work. So it didn't have anything to do with my interest in food.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with my interest in doing something for myself and seeing an opportunity.
Did those people at the Greek Gourmet act as mentors for you?
And they were meant to, but they were too busy. And I know that I've charged them, they charged me a fee, and we did some telephoning back and forth, and that was enough, as long as I had somebody that I could make contact with and bounce ideas off and ask them about suppliers and that sort of thing. They didn't do very much, but they did spark my interest, and their enthusiasm certainly encouraged me.
And I know that you have handed that kind of mentorship role on to other people who are interested in starting their businesses along the way.
Yes, I remember very distinctly how difficult it was. There was no women's enterprise, there was no E&L, there was no help whatsoever for entrepreneurs. And that's only 15 years ago. And I would have died to have the opportunities that are there now to get the help in putting the package together and that sort of thing. But it just wasn't there. And I remember the feeling that I'm on my own completely. And so I really identify with people who are starting a business now, and I sometimes get involved with them. And sometimes it's just a shoulder to cry on as things go, but at other times I can be of some real help.
Great. Teresa, maybe you could tell us what your experience in starting up was. How did you ever come up with the idea to start a furniture manufacturing plant in Eastport?
I guess my husband and I were looking for a business opportunity. Like Janet, we needed a job, and living in a rural area, there weren't many opportunities there for jobs. So we had to create our own job. And we looked around, and that seemed to be an area that wasn't being addressed, that people, weren't making furniture. And so, being as naive as we were, we figured that we'd make the best piece of furniture that could be made in Newfoundland. And we started that way. We didn't know anything about it once we started, but, we just got some books out and studied those things, and we decided, yeah, we can make furniture.
And it's been onward and upward ever since, eh?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Now, I know there's a lot of information about the barriers that women face in starting their businesses, barriers that people face when they're starting their businesses. And some of the particular barriers that women are reported to face are family responsibilities that they have, the lack of confidence, the lack of management training and skills, and some of the financial savvy. What kind of barriers did you face when you started your business?
When I started, I suppose one of the barriers was financial, but I think everybody has that, so I don't see that as being particularly different. But for women, certainly trying to balance the home and the business, and even when there is help and support at home, and I did have that, there's still the feeling among most of us that we have to do it all. So you run your business and you run your household, and you try to do 100% with both, which is extremely difficult, if not impossible. So that's one that's societal, I think, because nobody said we had to do it all, but we feel we do, and it's very hard to overcome that. There's a certain amount of guilt involved with leaving your children for long periods of time, leaving your husband to take care of things. The shoe has always been on the other foot prior to that, and we accepted being left to take care of children and households. But when we pass it over to somebody else, there's a certain difficulty with that. I had no problem with with confidence. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do. I may not have had a clear idea of how I was going to do it, but I knew what I wanted to do, and I felt confident I could do it, and that, held me instead. But dealing with the banks when I hadn't very much experience at all with that, trying to convince people that I knew what I was doing when I didn't have a market plan, I didn't have a business plan, in fact. So it was all pretty well from the mouth out that I had to convince the people who were involved, both suppliers, new suppliers, and the bankers, and the people I was renting from, that I knew what I was doing, and that I wasn't going to leave them holding the bag. And
year after year, you were able to show them that what you expected to do, you were able to do.
One of the things that I did do after the first year, I began planning the next year and putting my budget and my plan in writing, and presenting it to my banker. And whether by luck or because I knew what I was doing, each year worked out the way I had planned. So that was helpful in that I could go to my bankers and say, I told you this is what I was going to do, now I've done it. Now this is what I'm going to do this year. And one way or another I managed to do it, and that helped me over the hump with them, because even though I didn't make a lot of money in those years, when they saw that I was able to follow through on my plans, that was sort of built up my credibility with them.
I heard you tell a funny little story one time about when you went to a bank after you changed locations, and you went to your bank and you said, can I have another loan? I've just lost thousands of dollars, but, you know, will you, do you want to share that with us?
I did go to the bank once, and I was turned down for one reason and another, and I was put out by it. So I ended up changing banks and going to a bank that was more receptive to me. And a year from then, the previous bank called and asked for my financial statements because it was that time of the year again, sort of thing. And I said, certainly I'll send them right over. And what they didn't realize, of course, was that I was no longer a customer of theirs, but I was so pleased with my financial statements that I sent them and received a call the following week saying that they were pleased that I was doing so well and they'd like to extend me some credit. And at that point I said, perhaps you'd better check and see if I'm one of your customers.
Too late.
So I got the last laugh on that, and I think that everybody who's in business has their individual banking stories, and
Sure.
that one happens to be mine.
Yeah. Teresa, maybe you can tell us the kinds of barriers you found along the road for you when you were trying to get your business going and keep it going.
Initially, in the beginning, when we started was in the early 80s, and we were into a recession, which seems to happen every 10 years. And at that time, Gerald and I were, fairly secure. We owned our own home. We had developed a subdivision in Eastport. We didn't owe anybody any money, but we didn't have a job. So we put a mortgage on the house and decided to start this business and develop a product. And there was no point. We went to the bank and asked them if they would like to talk to us about a business plan. And they said, well, is it wrapped in gold? Well, we said, no. I said, sorry, we don't want to talk to you. So we went home and said, well, we're going to do this anyway. And we financed our house and took the money, and we started to develop the product. And it took us about 3 years making a product, getting it to the marketplace, convincing people that you could make a fine product here in Newfoundland and sell it. But by this time, we had run out of money because all of your money was spent in marketing, developing your product. And things became very difficult for us about that time. But by this time, we were so enthusiastic about the product we had that we couldn't give up. And it took us many years then after that to come up with some of this funding that they were telling us was out there and convincing them to let us have some of it to continue with this business. I guess one of the things like Janet was mentioning about family and support, and that we were fortunate in the beginning of our business that we started in our house. And so we had it in our double-car garage on the house, and I was always home for breakfast, dinner, and supper. So that the children didn't miss you as much because you were always there when they came through the door. And that was a big help. I didn't have to go away and leave them. But once we started marketing our product, of course we did. We had to leave and go to outside of Eastport and get it into the larger centre, which happened to be St. John's. So then we'd have to leave the children a lot. And thank God for my husband's parents living next door. They were a real help to us at that time.
Yeah. I heard you talk about your business when you started it up, and you were saying how you knocked a hole in the wall and put a fan in and rolled up the carpet.
Oh, yeah.
Home-based business at its best.
At its best. When we did make the decision to do that, we said, well, we have to use what we have at hand. So we made homemade bandsaw, sanders, and cut a hole in the wall in the den, put in a compressor there, and put a spray room up in one of the back rooms. And we didn't stop. Whatever had to be done to make it work, we did it. No matter how many hours or what the sacrifice. I don't know if that is good or bad.
Persistence, for sure, is one of those things that are necessary for success.
Most definitely.
Yeah. When I've also heard you talk about, well, you mentioned the funding situation, and at one point you had 5 funders involved, and nobody was. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was once we had proven ourselves, I think, a little in our garage. We realized that there was no way you were going to make a living at it. So we had to expand, and immediately at that time we knew that we needed a much larger facility to make a business like this work. But when we talked to people that were in the funding business, they laughed at the amount of money that we talked about. You know, you're crazy. I said, okay, well, we'll make a little place, you know, we'll start in a smaller step. And the total capital cost was $78,000, and we had 5 different government agencies involved in $78,000, and each one of them holding onto their money, waiting for the other one to release their money first. It was a bit of a nightmare because it got to the point where Gerald and I had to say, someone has to trust us. Someone has to come forward and say, I think those people might succeed, let's give them a chance. And we had to force the issue because if we didn't expand, we had to give up because you couldn't produce the product, enough product to satisfy demand. And
so I guess the fact that you're standing here or sitting here today means that someone did believe in what you were doing.
Well, today...
Certainly you believe in what you're doing.
We believe in what we're doing, and we did build the smaller building, and we stayed there for about 7 years. And this year is our 10th anniversary, and we've moved into a brand new building, 18,000 square feet. All of the equipment that we want to make the business work, and we're ready to take on the challenge now the way we wanted to a while ago.
Great. Well, that's good. What I'd like to know, we mentioned persistence as being a real key to success. What are some of the other things that go into the recipe for success? Janet?
When I think back on it now, aside from persistence, which one had to have with, you know, every day you got up and that was the one key thing that kept you going. When I think of it now, you know, 15 years later and 15 years older, the mental and physical stamina that is required is unbelievable. And looking back on it, I took it for granted at the time, but looking back on it, I think it was exceptional. And I think you'll find that a lot in entrepreneurs. There was no such thing as getting tired. There was no such thing as anything being too much to do. You got up as early as you could, and you worked. And I didn't even think of it as work. You're driven, really. And you do that until you can't do it anymore. And then you fall and sleep for a bit, and then you get up and do it again. But there's no question of, oh, I need a day off or I want a day off. It doesn't even come into it. And I suppose that I must have worked, you know I worked 7 days a week. I still do most of the time, straight for 5 or 6 years. And when I think of it now, I would never ask any employee of mine or ever expect them or ever let them do that, because it's such an exceptional effort.
And you took some time off then, didn't you?
After about 6 years, I felt like I had gone as far as I could go, and that I couldn't keep up that pace. That was obvious. It was inhuman pace. And I took a year off, and I had my brother, who had been working with me for a while then, ran the place for a year while I took a year off. And during that time I went to school, studied some accounting, sort of caught my breath, and had to really seriously think about how I was going to do it, because the business was growing very quickly, and it's a very, very labor-intensive business, so it employs a lot of people. So on top of running the business, there was all the human relations side of it that I had to deal with that hadn't really been carefully thought out. There wasn't a little packet that my employees were passed when they came in, telling them what was expected of them and what they could expect of me. these are the things that I then had to address, and how we were going to share the load, how we were going to share the work, so that in fact the greatest asset the business had at the time was myself. That's not true anymore. Now it's spread among the employees.
So that's part of your success.
Part of my success is that I
working
had
with
to
people.
do that, because it's obvious that you cannot keep that pace up indefinitely. You can do it for a very long time, and if you're in your 30s, I think you can do it. But when you're 50 or 60, it's just not possible to do. And even at 20, I don't think people at 20 know how far they can push themselves, and the idea of it might scare them off.
What other components do you think added to your success and the reason for you winning your award?
Well, first of all, I had a very, very clear idea of who my market was. My target market was as clear 15 years ago as it is today, with all the experience I have behind me. That hasn't changed at all. Knowing that and not veering from it, I could draw a picture of who my average customer is. And knowing that, that made it a lot simpler for me to direct my business, because I knew who I was doing it for. I didn't have to guess, who's going to come through my door tomorrow and what do I have to do for them. I always knew. And that helped a lot. I don't know why I knew or how I knew,
And how
but I
to
did.
reach those people.
I knew how to reach them. I felt that I knew how to relate to them. And the idea was to be a specialty store, and that meant that everything had to be top-notch, that the service had to be top-notch, the quality of the product, the quality of our relationship with our customers.
Teresa, I think you would have something to say about quality and also marketing. You find those are important to your business as well?
Yes, definitely. Quality, I think, has been the main factor in keeping us in the public eye, because people have bought products from us way back 10 years ago that came from our garage, and they're still using them today. And they're coming into our showroom and saying, it's just like today I bought it. It's got a few nicks and dents now because the kids are growing up on it, but that's what kept us there. And being a manufacturer here in the province too gives you it's a bit difficult, because if you purchase from a manufacturer or a retailer that comes in from the mainland, they can't walk up to the manufacturer face to face and say, hey, this doesn't work anymore. But here in Newfoundland, they can come right up to my house, my door, and they say, hey,
And they do.
this doesn't work anymore.
And they do, right, I guess.
So you can't afford to make a product that's not going to last. And that's what's kept us here, and we've always strived to put out as good a quality as we can. It's certainly very, very important. And then the word of mouth, of course, spreads as a part of your marketing. Very important part of it.
Well, I've seen some of the letters that have come to you as testimonials to the quality of product that you have, and they really are remarkable, people taking time to write you those kinds of glowing letters.
Yes, it's a real compliment. One lady in particular sent in her check, and then she sent another one just addressed to Gerald and Teresa, an extra $150 as a token of appreciation for the product.
A little bonus.
When was the last time you paid more than you were asked for a product?
That's great.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk for a few minutes about family and the importance of family to your businesses. I know both of you have family members involved in your business, but the support from family and then, so what kind of impact has your family had on your business, and what kind of impact has your business had on your family? Janet, you want to start?
Well, certainly I've mentioned to other people who are considering starting businesses that if you don't have the full support of your family, or the most significant person in your family, whether it's your mother, father, husband, whoever, then it's going to be a rocky road, because that's somebody who believes in what you're doing. And when every once in a while you get that fleeting moment of being not sure, having that person behind you to say, yeah, you're doing okay, just keep doing what you're doing fine. Something as small as that can be an enormous help. If I were coming home every day after a long day where I didn't make any money, and after a long year when I didn't make any money, and a long 2 years when I didn't make any money, and somebody had met me at the door every day and say, well, you didn't make any money again today, that would been, you wouldn't be able to deal with it. And so anybody, the person's family has to understand that they're in it for the long haul. This is not instant success. This is not necessarily riches. It's a lifestyle that you've chosen, and whether it makes money or whether it doesn't, it's what you choose to do, and it's worth doing, and you want those people to believe in it. So from that point of view, having the family behind you is absolutely essential, because there are lots of times that they need you, you're not going to be there, and they have to be able to understand that and give you the room to do what it is you want to do, give you space.
And then, of course, you've had family members be part of your business.
I've had family members be part of it. My husband works behind the scenes. He's a tremendous help to me. You don't see him in the shop, but he's one of the people behind. He was the one that helped me financially when I was getting started, and stood behind me and was prepared to lose his money or sell what he owned to keep me going and that sort of thing. And he helps me in lots of ways. And he's supportive because he's in business himself. And my kids have come up through the business, and I often wondered how they felt about it. But talking to them as adults, they felt that it taught them a lot about independence, and they feel very gratified that they grew up in that kind of atmosphere, which is comforting to me to know.
It's one of the big
this stage.
benefits, I
Yes.
think, of business ownership in the family, is to be a training ground for the kids.
Yes.
I guess, Teresa, at Heritage Woodworks, you certainly would know all about that as well.
Yes, well, I was often a bit scared about that, because our children, like I mentioned before, had it for breakfast, dinner, and supper, and I expected them, when it came to a certain point, to move off into other areas and not become involved. But they are just as enthusiastic about the business today as we are, and we're still good friends after all this time. You know, we can still spend lots of time together and enjoy being together. So I think if that's an indication of success, if you can keep the family together in spite of everything that happens in the business.
Well, you've been able to employ not only yourselves, which was your objective when you started off, but a number of other people in your community, as well as your children.
Well, our children right now are looking at branching out on their own and starting a refurbishing business.
Fabulous.
That we're adding to our business. So that's another spin-off industry because of Heritage Woodworks' name and the finish that we put on our products. We've got a lot of people wanting that on their older pieces.
Great.
So we're really enthusiastic about that, and they're very enthusiastic about it as well.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on our show this evening, and I want to congratulate you both for your awards. Janet, for your award from the P.J. Gardner Institute for Small Business Studies, and Teresa, your award for Woman Entrepreneur of the Year finalist.
Thank you,
for all of Canada.
Thank you.
There are several award-winning women around the province, as well as many successful women who haven't won awards yet. Many of their stories are going to be shared with us in upcoming programs. I want to thank you for watching, and want to remind you that this show will be seen next week at the same time, and I'd like you to check your listings for other showings during the week. For further information, you can contact your Women's Enterprise Bureau office nearest you. And I'd like to mention that the series sponsor for the show is the Economic Recovery Commission, and for today's show, the sponsor is the Bank of Nova Scotia. Next week's show is business ideas, where to get them, and what to do with them when you get them. Thank you very much. Bye.